He was just a small black kid standing outside a luxury restaurant, cold, ignored, and treated like he didn't belong. But in a single moment, everything flipped. A wealthy man, trapped in sudden pain, laughed at him, insulted him, dismissed him. Yet seconds later, that same kid would do something so unbelievable, so impossible, that the entire patio fell silent. Phones came out, people stared, and every bias they carried shattered right in front of them, because sometimes the person the world looks down on becomes the one who changes everything. Where are you watching from? Comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. He spent his days wandering the edges of downtown Philadelphia parks, underpasses, alleys behind restaurants, anywhere he could stay unnoticed. His clothes were worn thin, his shoes barely holding together, but his mind was sharper than anyone around him realized. Grady wasn't like other kids his age. While most children memorized video game cheats or song lyrics, he memorized things he found in trash bins, scraps of magazines, torn science articles, medical pages tossed from clinics. He didn't choose this kind of learning. It chose him. His mother always told him he was different, that he saw the world in a way others didn't. But after she passed, nobody else cared enough to see it. Every evening, he drifted toward the nicer part of the city, the kind of streets filled with warm lights, polished windows, and people who never imagined a child could sleep on concrete. Grady kept his distance, but he watched everything. How people moved, how they talked, how they treated others. He understood more than they'd ever believe. That night, the scent of grilled steak and garlic butter pulled him toward a high-end patio hidden behind ivy-covered walls, the Sterling Grove, a place where powerful people celebrated deals worth millions, while kids like Grady stood outside the fence hungry. He didn't plan to approach anyone. He never did. He just wanted warmth from the patio lights, maybe a piece of bread left on a plate. But as he lingered near the edge, something unusual caught his eye. An older man in a wheelchair shifting uncomfortably, wincing at something sharp running down his leg. Grady didn't know it yet, but the pain tightening that man's face was about to pull him directly into a world that never wanted him there. Grady stayed near the patio's edge, hidden behind the soft glow of string lights, but his eyes were fixed on the man in the wheelchair. Something was wrong, pain flashing across the man's face in quick, sharp waves. Grady had seen that look before, in hospital waiting rooms where people begged for help that never came. He recognized the way the man shifted, the way his foot twisted inward, the way he tried to hide the agony from the people around him. But the people around him weren't looking for pain. They were looking at Grady. It started with whispers, then the stares, then the tension that always crept into the air whenever a black kid stepped too close to a place meant for people with money. One of the dinner guests tugged her purse closer. Another man leaned back, eyes narrowing as if Grady's very presence was a threat. And then it happened. The wealthy man's leg locked completely. A sharp gasp escaped him, and his fork clattered to the ground. His friends jumped to their feet, some panicked, some frozen, but all of them shouted at once, "Call 911! Is it a stroke? Move the table!" Their voices crashed together in a frantic mess. Grady knew that chaos, knew it too well. He edged forward, instinct pulling him past fear. But the moment he stepped into the open, every head snapped his way, as if he were the danger, not the solution. "Hey! Back up, kid," another muttered, loud enough for half the patio to hear. "Great, just what we need." A stray, and the laughter came, bitter, cruel, unmasked. The man in the wheelchair, face twisted with pain, looked Grady up and down, his voice cut sharp. "What are you doing here? Looking for scraps? Go on, before you steal something." The words hit harder than any shove ever could. Not because they were new, but because they were familiar, too familiar. Words he had heard from security guards, store owners, strangers on sidewalks who saw his skin and his clothes and instantly decided who he was. But Grady wasn't thinking about the insults. He was thinking about the article he had read 2 nights earlier, an emergency procedure for sudden nerve compression, the kind that could freeze a leg in seconds. He looked at the man's foot again, the angle, the rigid muscles, the shallow breaths. He knew this. I can help," Grady said quietly. "I know what's happening to him." A wave of shock rippled across the patio, quickly replaced by disbelief, then ugly amusement. One of the men laughed so hard he slapped the table. "You help him? Kid, you can't even afford shoes." The man in the wheelchair pointed at Grady, smirking despite the pain. "Fine. If you're such a genius, fix my leg. Do it right now." And if you can't, security's taking you straight off this property. Guests lean forward, phones recording, expecting humiliation. Another moment, the world would laugh at a black boy who dared step out of place. But Grady wasn't thinking about humiliation. He was thinking, if I walk away, this man could lose his leg, or worse. He was thinking about his mom whispering, "Somebody, please listen," and he was thinking about what happens when nobody does. So he stepped closer. The crowd sucked in a breath. The guards moved toward him, and Grady, small and trembling but sure, in a way no child should ever have to be, said the words that would change everything. "I can fix it, but you have to let me try." And the next seconds would determine whose world would break first. Grady's hands trembled as he stepped into the bright circle of patio lights. Every eye locked on him, every phone raised like a weapon waiting to capture his failure. The security guard hovered inches behind him, ready to drag him away the moment things went wrong. And the man in the wheelchair, red-faced, sweating, barely breathing, still smirked through the pain, convinced this was all a joke. Grady wasn't. He knelt beside the man's frozen leg, feeling dozens of stares burning into his back. He pressed gently at first, searching for the spot he had memorized from torn medical pages. If he wasn't, the consequences would land on him, not the man he was trying to save. "There," Grady whispered, more to himself than to anyone else, his fingers finding the tight knot of muscle deep beneath the skin. The moment he applied pressure, real pressure, the man erupted in a raw, guttural scream. Chair scraped, guests jumped back, a woman covered her mouth in shock. "Stop him!" someone shouted. "He's hurting him!" But the man grabbed the armrest, eyes wide, body shaking violently. "Don't move!" he gasped. "Let him finish." Grady pushed harder, using every ounce of strength in his small frame. His thumbs burned, his arms shook. The man's pain felt like a wave crashing over the entire patio. People watched in stunned horror, whispering, "What is he doing? Is this even safe? This kid is out of his mind." Seconds stretched into eternity. Then, a deep, heavy pop cut through the winter air. The man's body jerked, his breath caught, and the pain vanished. Silence, not a whisper, not a breath. Slowly, disbelievingly, he lifted his leg, flexed his toes, rotated his ankle, bent his knee. No pain, not even a flicker. Gasps rippled across the patio. Phones lowered. Even the security guard froze. But the man in the wheelchair, he didn't freeze. He stood. For the first time in weeks, he stood on both legs, staring at Grady with a mix of disbelief, gratitude, and something breaking open inside him. But the crowd wasn't done. Because what happened next would change Grady's life even more than the miracle he'd just performed. The patio erupted the moment the man stood, but none of the noise seemed real to Grady. People weren't laughing anymore. They weren't mocking him or clutching their belongings. They were staring at him with something he wasn't used to seeing in their eyes: respect, shock, and for the first time, recognition. His voice shook, not from pain, but from something far heavier. He apologized. He thanked Grady. He told the crowd what they had just witnessed. And suddenly, the phones recording Grady weren't capturing humiliation. They were capturing hope. But even in that moment, Grady understood the truth. If he hadn't performed a miracle, those same people would have watched him get escorted off the property without a second thought. His worth, his potential, had only become visible when he did something extraordinary. And that is the tragedy behind the miracle. Still, the man refused to let the night end there. He cleared a space around Grady, told everyone exactly how wrong he'd been, and vowed to change the boy's life right there on the patio. A scholarship, a stable home, access to real education and real opportunity. Promises that should have been Grady's long before he ever had to save a grown man to earn them. As cameras flashed and voices rose, one truth echoed through the cold night air: Grady wasn't invisible anymore. But he shouldn't have needed a miracle to be seen in the first place. Because for so many black children in America, brilliance gets overlooked, while assumptions get amplified. They are underestimated, doubted, dismissed, until they do the impossible. And even then, some people still don't see the human being behind the headlines. Grady's story ended in hope, but how many others end in silence? And the real question is, how many more Gradys are out there, waiting for a world that finally chooses to see them?